All right. Well, thanks everyone and welcome. I hope everybody's doing well. It's great to be with you. Thank you for taking some of your very valuable time and spending it with me, and especially your valuable attention. So here we start the new year, and there's a lot of concern as far as what's going on with the real estate market, the interest rate environment, the Fed, recession, inflation. In fact, if you were to Google some of the most widely searched terms today, it includes all of that. Some of the biggest search terms today are recession, housing bubble, interest rates, inflation, the Fed. So all of these are on the minds of our clients and our customers. So it's up to us to be able to break through and explain that to them, because the media has been wrong for years and years and years talking about a housing bubble. And now the drum beats even louder and louder and louder. So what is happening with housing? Is there going to be a housing bubble? Well, we're going to explore that. We're going to explain to you, spoiler alert, the real estate market is in pretty good shape, and I'll show you why. But real estate is, of course, going to be affected by interest rates. So what drives interest rates, and which way are interest rates headed? Are they going to 10% on mortgage rates like a lot of people said? So we're going to explore that. But first, let's understand what drives mortgage rates. A lot of people think it's the Fed. It's not the Fed. The Fed can influence other interest rates by hiking rates or lowering rates, like business loans, consumer loans, car loans, credit cards, things of that nature. But mortgage rates are driven by inflation. And that's very important. Now, when the Fed, of course, was buying mortgage bonds and they were buying the mortgage market, yeah, they fixed mortgage rates at around 3% for a while, but they're not buying mortgage rates anymore and buying mortgage bonds. So as mortgage rates go up and down, they're going to react to inflation. And here's why. So an example would be, if you had given me a mortgage, and let's say I'm making monthly payments to you of $2,000 a month. So every month for a long period of time, you're getting a check from me that says $2,000. So you go out and you buy a shopping list of goods and services with that $2,000 this month. The next month, you get everything else that you needed on that list again. The following month, maybe you get everything on that list again. But over time, you realize that, hey, you know what? I can't get everything on that list anymore because prices are going up slowly and inflation is causing prices to go up. So I have to leave a few things off. So in other words, the check still says $2,000, but it doesn't feel like $2,000 used to. It doesn't go as far. And that's what inflation does. Inflation erodes the buying power of a fixed payment that you're receiving. Now, when inflation was very low, like it was a little over a year ago, it was like 1%. That erosion was really tiny. But because inflation had gone up quite a bit, and we've seen that this year, that erosion is going to happen a lot more rapidly. So you can't do anything about the loans you've already done, but on the new loans that you're going to be issuing, you're thinking about that more rapid rate of erosion because of the higher inflation, and your only defense is to charge a higher interest rate. So for loaning out that same amount of money, you collect a higher monthly payment instead of $2,000, maybe $2,300 or $2,400 a month, so that you now can offset the more rapid rate of erosion due to inflation. And that's why mortgage rates, or any long-term interest rate that you're receiving, is going to be dependent on inflation, not the Fed. Now, once we understand that, then we can kind of take a look at moving forward and taking a look at what to expect this year. And as I said, this year, there's a lot of question marks as far as what is going to happen with housing, with interest rates, recession, all of those things, and how they all kind of play together. So when we take a look at the opportunity that exists today, I truly believe that this is the opportunity that you've been waiting for in housing. And I'm going to break this down step by step and explain. So the news is good ahead, but we just have to be able to see through to spot the opportunity so we can explain it to our customers. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negative media. Maybe you saw this story that was an American banker talking about, is this time to quit the business, whether in real estate or mortgage? Is it time to quit because times are tough? And they cite that, hey, look, not only are refinances down 84%, but overall activity is down like 50 to 60%. That's scary, right? And perhaps maybe some of you might be thinking, I'm a little concerned. And that's normal to see that kind of change in the business and to have some questions. But what I'm here to tell you is that you should feel good about what's around the corner. Now, I mentioned that inflation and mortgage rates are going to respond to each other, and they're going to move very similarly. Well, here's proof of that. Over several years, this bottom line in pink, that is the rate of inflation. This line in blue, what you're seeing there, that is mortgage rates on 30-year fixed rates. And notice the relationship. When inflation goes up, mortgage rates go up. When inflation comes down, mortgage rates come down. Inflation goes sideways, same for mortgage rates. They're going to go sideways. And you see this little blip up in inflation. Well, you had a corresponding blip up in mortgage rates. So they're very closely tied. Now, during the period of time here when there was quantitative easing, meaning that the Fed was buying mortgage-backed securities. So this is different than changing interest rates. They were physically buying mortgage bonds to fix mortgage rates around 3%, which they did for a period of time here. So as they did that, and you can see right here is 3%, mortgage rates stayed right in that range. But meanwhile, something was happening to inflation. You could see inflation started moving up pretty sharply. But what did our Fed chair say? Our Fed chair, Jerome Powell, said, don't worry about it, because remember that famous word? He said, it's transitory. Don't worry about it. Well, obviously he was incorrect, and the Fed didn't really understand inflation. So eventually they woke up and they stopped buying mortgage bonds. And when they let mortgage rates move as they normally would do freely, what did they do? They did what they always do, and that is follow inflation. So as inflation took off, mortgage rates took off to the upside. When inflation took a little bit of a drop over the spring of last year, so did mortgage rates. Then as mortgage rates jumped higher, as inflation jumped higher, rather, mortgage rates jumped higher. But when inflation of late has started coming down, look at what mortgage rates are doing. They've been following suit. So this relationship is very important. So, okay, we talk a lot about inflation. So what is inflation after all? Well, let's understand it. You know what inflation is? It's simply too many dollars chasing too few goods. And you've seen that over and over, right? You saw that in real estate when there were too many buyers with money, that's too many dollars, chasing too little inventory. Well, prices moved higher. And you could do that with anything that we had when there were shortages of things, everything from food items to toilet paper. We know that those prices got bid higher because there was few of them, right? Used cars, new cars, as there was less production and people wanted them, that drove the price higher, especially with all the stimulus money that was out there. So that's what created a lot of this inflation. Now, of the money that's out there, would it be surprising to you to know that about 85% of all the money that's out there is credit? So it's credit that we really run on. And when we think about the Fed stepping in and saying, hey, you know what, we've got to slow down inflation, that means they got to take some of these dollars out of the system. How do they do that? Well, what they do is they make borrowing more difficult by charging higher rates. Now, as I mentioned to you, it doesn't directly affect mortgage rates, but certainly on car loans, on business loans, things like that. So imagine 9 months ago, a family goes in and they want to buy a car. They look at a beautiful $60,000 car and they ask, how much is the monthly payment? And they're told $600 a month. And they say, you know what? I'll take it. Now, they sign a piece of paper and they drive off without ever paying any money up front. That's because somebody at a bank made a few keystroke entries and poof, $60,000 was created out of thin air and sent to the car dealer. This is the way it works. And imagine that happening millions of times across the country, how much money is created. Now, it's not just car loans, it's other types of loans, business loans. When rates were super cheap, that money was easy to come by. But now let's fast forward to today. The Fed's hiked rates and rates on car loans have gone up a lot. So a similar family goes to look at that same exact type of car. I say, how much is it? It's the same price, $60,000. Well, how much is the monthly payment? It's no longer $600 a month. It's $1,000 a month. And that family says, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll wait. So there's no keystroke entry made at a bank. There's no poof, instantly $60,000 is created. And that's what starts to happen. Multiply that by millions of families across the country, and there's a lot more money. So the Fed hikes rates and they take money out of the system. In addition to that, when interest rates were very low, you weren't getting any money in the bank by putting your money in savings or any of those safe investments. So people said, well, if I'm not going to get a rate of return, I'll spend it instead of save it. But guess what? Take a look around. Today, you can get a pretty good rate of return by saving it. So by the Fed hiking rates, banks now can offer you more. And that means people are saying, instead of spending it, I'll save it. That takes money out of the system. And how about goods? China's opened up, shipments are coming, and our supply chain's better. So there's a lot more goods. And that's some of the reasons why inflation's coming down. Because what's inflation? Too many dollars chasing too few goods. So now there's less dollars, and now there's more goods. And in fact, there may be a lot more goods because we're seeing inventory levels. Look at this chart of inventory. This shows you before COVID and before the recession that happened right around COVID, inventory levels were building, but then they got dramatically drained because everything got shut down during COVID, right? So, all the shelves were empty. There was no inventory. Then China and the supply chain started to open up, but then China shut down. So we didn't get inventory again. But now, not only do we have as much inventory as we used to before COVID, there's an excess. That's why every day you're getting bombarded with emails. Hey, this is on sale. This is on sale. This is on sale. So excess inventory means they've got to get rid of that stuff. So that means sales and discounts are happening. Lower prices means lower inflation. And as we've learned, lower inflation leads to lower mortgage rates, which is good for the housing market. All right. Now, this chart here will teach you some really important things. I'm going to break this down for you. What this will show you is how to understand where inflation or how inflation is measured, and in many ways, what to anticipate. So this chart is something that I think is critically important for us because it will help us to see the future. Now, when we look at inflation, one of the ways to look at it is called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which you may have heard of. Now, there's two ways to look at it. There's an overall rate of CPI, which includes everything. And that's going up at 7.1% year over year as of right now. But there is also something called the core rate of CPI. Now, what's the difference? The core rate takes away food prices and energy prices. Now, some people say, well, wait a minute, we need food and we need energy, right? Except I want you to look at this through the eyes of the Federal Reserve. The Fed, when they set monetary policy, what they're looking at is what can we influence? Now, food prices are often determined by weather, and energy prices will be determined by pipelines and determined by whether OPEC has more or less production. So the Fed can hike rates all they want, or they can reduce rates all they want. It's not going to affect the weather or what OPEC does. So what the Fed looks at is what can we look at that we can influence? And that's the core consumer price index. And right now, as of today, the year over year inflation reading for this is 6%. That's way too high. So we need this number to come down. So how do we get to 6%? Well, it's made up of the most recent 12 months of data. So the most recent month we have right now is November of 2022. And you go back from November of 22 to December of 2021, and you add all these up, account for a little rounding, and you get to 6%. As it turns out, tomorrow we get the reading for December, and that's going to have a big influence on where interest rates go. Because as we know, if inflation comes down, mortgage rates go down. If inflation goes up, mortgage rates will go up. So back in June of last year, June of 2022, a lot of people were forecasting that inflation had peaked and was ready to come down. I was one of the lone voices. And if you saw me at one of my talks or one of my webinars or on TV, I was one of the only people saying that no, inflation hadn't peaked. And in fact, we thought that interest rates would go up quite a bit. And we pointed to a date back in June. We said November 10th is the date that you need to look at for when interest rates will start coming down. It's a pretty bold call to say that. Well, I'm going to show you exactly what we were looking at so you could do this yourself. So let's go back to June. And the inflation number had just come out and it showed 0.7%. But when we got the June of 2022 reading, it replaced June of 2021. Now notice June of 2021's reading was 0.8%. So when you replace this 0.8 with a lower number of 0.7, well, then the year over year number comes down. And a lot of people thought inflation had peaked. Now, we thought about this and we said, no way. Because the Fed just got serious in June of 2022 with their first rate hike of 75 basis points. And it takes time for that to filter through. And then they were going to have other rate hikes that would slow down the economy by making borrowing more expensive and slowing things down. So we didn't think it would happen until around October that you'd start to see the results of that. Plus, we didn't know what the readings would be for July, August, and September at that time of 2022. But what we did know was that they were going to be replacing July, August, and September of 2021. And folks, put on your thinking cap here. I want you to look at this and tell me, what do you notice about the readings that were in 2021 during July, August, and September? They were very what? very low, right? So there was a good chance that these low numbers were going to be replaced by higher numbers. And when lower numbers get replaced by higher numbers, the year-over-year inflation reading was going to go up. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. And as inflation moved up by about 1%, you know what happened to mortgage rates? They went up by a little over 1%. They went from the high fives to the low sevens. We got up to around 7.125%, 7.25% on 30-year fixed rate mortgages. But sure enough, just as we had said, on November 10th, we got the inflation reading for October. And yes, it's true that by then, those Fed rate hikes slowed things down enough so that we got a low reading. But more importantly, the reason why we're looking at this number was because that was the month that we're going to replace October of 2021, which was a high number. So when you take a high number, replace it with a low number, that inflation reading started coming down. And the same thing happened in November. When we got that data in December, it came down again. And that's why inflation has come down so much and why you've seen mortgage rates come down by about 1%. Now, tomorrow, we're going to get the reading for December of 2022. And we will replace yet another high reading, which happened in December of 2021. It looks to us that we should see some good news tomorrow. Now, here's the thing. If we get a reading that shows inflation for December of 2022, and you get this tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, was 0.3%, that 0.3 will replace this 0.6, and you'll see this inflation read come down to about 5.7. I think if that happens, then mortgage rates should do okay. We'll be fine. We'll move down maybe a little bit. If it gets a little bit lower, let's say we repeat what happened in November, and it comes in at just 0.2%, then the year-over-year rating on inflation will be 5.6, and I think you will have a really good day in the bond market. I think the 10-year Treasury, which is around 3.6 right now, comes all the way down to 3.43. I think you will have a very big rally if you get that number at 0.2 and you get the year-over-year to read 5.6. But if this comes in at 0.4, which I don't think there's a good chance of, but it's a possibility. If it comes in at 0.4 and we only see this drop from 6% to 5.8%, I think the markets will be disappointed. And I think there's a chance that mortgage rates move up a little bit. So that's the stage that we have set for us for this very important number that's going to come out tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. So within this reading, a lot of the weight comes from shelter costs. That's the cost of putting a roof over your head, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house, whether it's shelter or lodging costs outside of home. All these account for what are called shelter costs. And as you can see, in real time, they have been decelerating, right? These costs are starting to come down. But unfortunately, the way it's looked at in CPI, take a look. You see CPI weights what happened 12 months ago, 11 months ago, 10 months ago, the same as what they see happening today and last month. So unfortunately, a lot of the inflation that was in the report and that's already passed and started to come down will not be reflected in the year-over-year number. It's the same thing when you look at this. So shelter costs are certainly coming down, but the way it's looked at in CPI is because of the lag. It looks like it's still going up because of the averaging factor. So it reminds me of a roller coaster, right? This kind of looks like a roller coaster here. And if you've ever gone on a roller coaster and you remember that first big hill, there comes a point in time where the front of the roller coaster is actually heading down, where the back of the roller coaster is still going up. That's kind of like where we are here. In real time, those shelter costs are starting to roll over. But the way it's viewed in CPI, the way the Fed's looking at it, is that those shelter costs are still going up. When we get through February, all of the data will then start to show shelter costs coming down. And that will be a big help for us. That will put us in a position where you will start to see inflation come down faster and mortgage rates come down faster. So when you get past February, you will start to see mortgage rates move down more rapidly. They've already come down a lot from like 7.25% to right now 6.125%, 6.25%. So they've come down about 1%. That's a big move, but there's a lot more that's to come. And we think that happens in the first half of the year. How much? Well, let's take a look how much. Now, There is this normal relationship for the past 35 years that's happened between the 10-year treasury and mortgage rates. The 10-year treasury is in blue and mortgage rates on a 30-year fixed rate are in yellow. Notice that they seem to move pretty much, in alignment with each other. Not exact, but pretty close. And the normal spread is about 175 to 200 basis points. If you don't know what that means about 1.75% to 2% difference between the two. So for example, let's take a look here. Look at 5% line. If the 10-year treasury is at 5%, like it is here or here, mortgage rates should be about 2% higher than that. And they are. Right here, mortgage rates are at 7. Right here, mortgage rates are at 7. If the 10-year treasury is at 4, like it was here or here, mortgage rates should be around 6, like they are here or here. That's a normal relationship between the two. But something crazy happened a couple of months ago. That relationship, intact for about 35 years, got thrown out the water. Here's what happened. The spread didn't go to 2%. It went to 3%. What the heck happened here? When the 10-year treasury went above 4, mortgage rates didn't go like they normally would above 6. They went above 7. How come? Well, because part of the value of a mortgage is servicing. You see, the more value a mortgage has, the better the price, the lower the rate. So part of the value is servicing. What is servicing? No one holds on to a mortgage anymore. When you make your mortgage payment to a company, they're not holding the mortgage if it's a fixed rate. So what's happening? It's being sold. However, someone has to do the work of collecting the payments, paying the taxes, sending you a note if you're late, answering your questions, all the work that has to be done to service that mortgage. That's why they're called a servicer. And they get paid for that. They get paid a fee. That's part of the value of a mortgage. And that fee can be measured. Look, I'm going to be doing this service every month. I get paid every month. So overall, the value depends on how many months I'm expected to have this. I'm expected to have this mortgage for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 4 years, whatever it is. It's measured over a long period of time. And that servicing has value. But all that value has been taken out of the mortgage market. Why? Because all the smart money in the world, the smartest minds in the world, agreed with me that they felt that 7% mortgages weren't going to last. They felt that inflation was going to come down and mortgage rates were going to come down. So they felt that anybody with one of these mortgages at 7.25%, they were going to get rid of it when rates dropped and when they were going to refinance it. So they weren't going to get paid on servicing the mortgage in years. They were going to get paid in months. So that meant the servicing value was little to nothing. And that made the price of mortgages get worse. And when the price of mortgages goes lower or gets worse, the rate on that mortgage goes up. And that's why the spread went to 300 basis points or 3% instead of 2%. Now, what we had said was we said, look, we think inflation is going to come down and we think the 10-year treasury will start coming down. But as it does, we think mortgage rates come down faster. So now the 10-year treasury has gone from 4.25, let's call it, to 3.5. It's come down 0.75%. But mortgage rates did come down faster. It's come down by 1%. So what was a difference of 3% is now narrowing to closer to about 2.5 to 2.75%. So we're not quite to where we should be, but it's starting to happen. And as the 10-year treasury goes down because inflation's coming down, mortgage rates will continue to drop, but they will continue to drop faster. Because you see, a 6% mortgage has more servicing value than a 7 because I'll refinance a 7% faster than I would to get rid of it than a 6. And I'll get rid of a 6% mortgage faster than refinancing a 5 if rates drop, right? So as lower the rates go, the more servicing value gets added. Now, when the 10-year treasury gets to around our target of around 3% or less the first half of this year, based upon inflation dropping, where will mortgage rates go? Mortgage rates will go to where they historically go, which is around 5%. So you should be expecting in the first half of this year, mortgage rates at around 5%. Now, what does that mean? That means you unleash a horde of buyers who have been hibernating and waiting for this opportunity on the marketplace into a market with very, very low inventory still. And whenever you have more buyers, then you have product, prices are well supported and you should see prices go up. Now, another factor is recession, and recessions do cause interest rates to drop. But when we see recessions, based upon the old definition of 2 quarters of negative GDP, we've already seen a recession right this year, but perhaps we haven't seen the full effect of it. And here's why. It's because people are living off their credit cards. Before the most recent recession and COVID, you saw people jacking up their credit cards. Then COVID came and, well, I couldn't buy anything anyway because there was no products. Plus I got stimulus, so I paid off my credit card. But once the economy reopened, people liked the lifestyle. So what did they start to do? Let's keep the lifestyle going. If I don't have stimulus, I'll put it on my credit card. And now they've gone way above the previous all-time high to new highs we've never seen before in credit card balances. And meanwhile, look at what they've done to their savings. Before the recession and COVID, the savings rate was about 10%. And then, oh my gosh, I got my stimulus check. I could put some of it in the bank. But then people quickly ate it up. I got another stimulus check, and we went through that fast. And I got another stimulus check. And look how fast we went over that, went back to the old savings rate. But look at what has happened in the past year or so, folks. The savings rate, unfortunately, has dropped from 10% pre-COVID to now just 3%. So people are living off of savings and off of credit cards. But even these have an endpoint. There's a limit to that. And what will happen is when people hit the limit, the economy hits a wall and we get into a recession. So what does that mean? Recession means, if you look at mortgage market, that rates will decline. Here's the last several recessions. Watch what happens to mortgage rates. They go down. Last time was 1%, and then they went down more. Here they went down by more than 1%, and then even more. Here by almost 1%, and then more. Here by more than 2%, and then more. Here by 5%, and then more. Here 4%. So you get the picture. Mortgage rates drop during recessions. So if you ask me, Barry, you're talking about a 5% rate, but right now mortgage rates are a little over 6. Can we go from a little over 6 to 5? Yes, 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 yes. You can get there, especially if we have a recession, which I think we will have. So what does that mean for housing? That's got to be bad for housing, right? A recession doesn't sound good for the housing market. The media certainly is going to tell you that. Well, let's look at the facts. All these dark areas are recessions. And you will notice that in 8 of the past 9 recessions, home prices did very well during and after the recession. Only one time it didn't. But that was because the housing bubble came to be before the recession. It wasn't the recession that caused the housing bubble. In fact, it was the recession that caused us to kind of get out of the housing bubble. Team, what caused the housing bubble? Well, first of all, the types of mortgages that were available then aren't available now. So we want to look at, can it happen again? Because people are saying, oh, another housing bubble is brewing, another housing bubble. Well, let's look at the facts. Back then, you had loans that were, how about no income, no asset, no job, 580 credit score, and 0 down payment. We don't have any of that stuff available today. So the products are different. The loans are of a higher quality. But most importantly, any type of price discovery happens based upon supply and demand. And back here, there was just too much inventory, too much supply, and not enough buyers. So how do we measure that? How do we measure supply and demand? Well, here's how you measure supply. Supply coming to the market is builders completing and finishing homes that you can move into. That's your new supply coming in. It isn't somebody who's selling their house and moving because they have to occupy another residence, right? So it's kind of revenue. It's inventory neutral. So new supply of inventory comes from builders building homes. But how about demand? Demand comes from something called a household formation. So what's a household formation? Imagine this. Imagine mom, dad, and a child all in one household. Eventually, that child reaches an age where they move out. And the average age for that in the United States is 33 years old. So now that child moves out, gets their own place, and you still have the same family. You still got mom, dad, and a child, except they now have 2 households instead of 1. So they have formed an additional household. That's how you measure demand. And let's look at the next chart, which shows you both. Let's go back to 2004. And you'll notice here the blue line, that is households being formed. The gold bar, that's builders completing homes. And notice how close they are here in 2004 and 2005. And the housing market was doing great. Now, it's okay if the gold bars, those households, that those completions from builders are a little bit above the demand, because every year about 100,000 homes due to aging have to be replaced. So builders actually have to build a little bit more than the demand. But in 2006, something crazy happened. Take a look at this. See this gold bar here? Builders built more homes than they ever had built. Even to today, we haven't built anything close to this, right? So the highest amount ever. But at the same time, look at households being formed. The demand dropped off a cliff. What the heck happened? Look at that. Huge. And then again, another step down in 2007. Then they stayed low for a while and then started to build back up again. And if you want to know why the housing market's been so great, take a look at this. Too much demand, not enough supply. It's going to drive prices higher. So what happened here? And more importantly, can it happen again? When everybody's talking about a housing bubble, here's what the housing bubble was, because we saw this imbalance, too many homes, not enough buyers again. And by 2008, you had a full-blown housing bubble in 2009 too, right? So this all contributed to it. Can that happen again? Well, here's what it was. Those 33-year-olds on average that came in such smaller numbers in 2006 compared to 2005, what was the reason for that? Why were there so few 33-year-olds in 2006? Maybe what we should do is look at birth rates from 33 years before, and let's see if there was a change. So 33 years before 2006, these people here, they were born in 1973. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you birth rates from 1973 right here. Here's 1973. And here's that 33-year-old who was born in 1973. They were born here. And look at the drop in births. Isn't that crazy? Births dropped. Then in 1974, births dropped again. Then they stayed flat and started going up. Well, wait a second. Look at 33 years later. Exactly the same thing. The 33-year-olds dropped again, stayed flat, and started going up. Isn't that amazing? Yes. It's a hand-in-glove fit because these people were born, and 33 years later, they're going to form those households. So why did birth rates drop like this? And again, is there a reason for it? There is. I don't offer any opinion here, but I will give you the statistical reason, and just going to give you for statistical purposes only. It's because abortions were legalized in 1973. And obviously, as a result of that, fewer people were born. And because births take a while, you saw the same kind of little drop in 1974, and then it flattened out before growing again. And 33 years later, you saw fewer households, but nobody planned for that. Nobody looked at the birth rates, and builders just built more homes like crazy. So what's going to happen in the future now? As we enter 2023, those 33-year-olds, when were they born? Well, let's do the math. That means they were born in 1990, right here, 33 years ago. And if we go up, what do we say? Wow, big difference, right? There is going to be a huge supply of buyers coming to the market for the next several years that will put us in a position to have a lot of demand. Now, right now, there seem to be hibernating a little bit because interest rates moving up so quickly have them sitting on the sidelines and maybe living with mom and dad a few more months. But as interest rates drop back down to a more comfortable level of 5%, you will see them come out of the woodwork. So let's take a quick look here, and you see a lot of negativity in the media. And one of the queens of that is Diana Olick on CNBC. She has literally put out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of negative stories about housing, saying don't buy, rent, the housing market's going to crash, there's a housing bubble, hundreds and hundreds. So what I've done is I've taken over the past 8 years that she's been so negative on housing, just a few stories and headlines for you to take a look at. 8 years ago, she said, hey, we're in a housing bubble larger than 2006. She said this 8 years ago. Now, home prices obviously never were in a bubble. They've gone straight up. And we've seen, if you were scared to buy a $300,000 home back then, you missed out that year on a 5% gain or $15,000. Now, the next year, does she come back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong? No, she just says, hey, we're in a new housing bubble. Oh, but prices went up again. Then the following year, she said, home ownership does not build wealth. Well, can anybody point to the one person in the last 6 years who didn't build wealth in home ownership? Ridiculous, right? And that year, home values went up again. So the next year, she says, don't buy a home, rent. Well, can you tell me one person who was just thrilled that they rented for the past 5 years and threw money away and didn't take advantage of the housing market. Again, home values went up that year. And then in the middle of 2019, she says, do not buy a home until you listen to my special report. And she puts out this big special report saying that, beware, the housing market's about to shift in a bad way for buyers. Uh-oh, maybe I should rent, right? Well, that's not what happened. Home values went up again. And at the end of 2019, she put out her forecast for 2020, which, what do you guess she said? She said, don't buy a home because next year is going to be hard on the housing market. Except that the housing market did fantastic. And then, of course, a year and a half ago, she said, hey, the housing boom is over. But we've been up 18% since then. In fact, in the last 12 months, we're up 10%. So clearly, the media doesn't get it, or the media is just trying to get eyeballs here and constantly push this bad news. But your clients hear this. And that's why it's up to us to show them the facts. Another thing that they say is, hey, okay, inventory is rising and that's a bad thing. And they'll show you this chart of inventory having gone up more than it was last year. While that might look scary, what I'd like you to look at is not just 1 year. Let's take a look at the last 10 years and see if there's a pattern there. Notice anything? Here's the last year you just saw before. But here's 10 years. This happens every year. Why does this happen? It happens because of school. It happens because parents know that if they move in the middle of the school year, that it's difficult for their children to have friendships. It's difficult because their kids might get picked on, but also it's difficult for them scholastically. Their grades might suffer because the curriculum is going to be different. Their kid might be doing great with one school, but then if they get pulled out of there and put into a different school where the curriculum's totally different, they could get lost and hard for them to catch up and their grades could suffer. So parents don't want that for their children. So you know what they say? I want to be moved into my new house so my kid could start at the beginning of the school year, which means I've got to be moved in the months of June, July, or August, which means the months I have to sell my home and get rid of it is right here, April, May, June, July. Again, every single year. That's why this cycle happens every year. But the media doesn't understand it, or the media wants to just scare you. And that's why they do this. We have to be able to break through that and be more educated and understand it. Another thing they do is they say, hey, it looks just like 2007, another housing bubble. Oh, really? In 2007, there were 4 million units for sale. Today, there's 1.14 million units for sale. There's 3 million less homes for sale. But you know what? The United States has 30 million more people that are in the United States. So you got 30 million more people fighting for 3 million fewer homes. It is definitely not the same as it was in 2007. And even that 1.14 million homes that are in inventory doesn't tell the full story because it includes those that are off the market that are already under contract. So really, there's only 750,000 homes available in this country of 340 million people. That is historically very low. It's about half the norm. Here's where we are. Here's normal. We're about half the normal inventory. Oh boy, foreclosures. CBS Market Watch just put this out and say, dramatic increase in foreclosures. Filings are up more than 150%. That sounds really bad, right? Well, yeah, if you're going to compare it to last year when we had a moratorium for most of the year that you couldn't do a foreclosure, or 2020, same thing, you couldn't do a foreclosure for most of the year. So sure, compared to the last 2 years when you couldn't do foreclosures, it looks like it went up. But if you compare it to a normal year like 2019, we're down 60% from there. But they won't tell you that. They won't tell you we're down 95% from a bad year. No, they won't tell you that. They won't tell you that back in 2008, only 19% of the home's value was equity and 81% is a loan. They won't tell you that today, only 42% is a loan and 58% is equity. You think people are going to let you take their home? Of course not. But the media won't do that because good news doesn't sell. Good news doesn't get eyeballs. Good news doesn't get advertising dollars. You know what sells? Well, we all know sex sells, and we know that fear sells. So folks, this is just a version of fear porn. That's what this is. Now, a big thing that you're hearing every day is affordability issues. It's not affordable. It's not. And of course, it's less affordable than it was. But here's where you have to be smart. And here's where we have to understand this to teach our customer, because out of chaos comes opportunity. You have to be first to recognize it. So let's take a look together. Last year, if you were going to buy a home, and let's say the mortgage amount was $400,000, a year ago, rates were 3.5%. So here's what your payment was a year and a half ago. Now this year, values have gone up 10%. So that means I should be, if I wanted to buy a similar home, I've got to borrow 10% more. So it's a bigger mortgage of 440. And today mortgage rates are like 6 1/8 or 6 1/4. Let's say 6 1/4. That means my payment's up $900 a month. And that's where the media stops. They put these stories out there. Oh, it's not affordable because $900 a month more. Okay, we get that. Of course it is. However, in order to manage this, you have to talk about your income too. And Fannie Mae said the average income of a family buying this home with a $400,000 mortgage last year was about $9,000 a month. Think about two income earners making $50,000 a piece. Now, this year, that's changed. And we have good data on how much it's changed. The folks at ADP, they measure 25 million records, and they say if you stayed at your job, your income went up 7.3%. And if you switch jobs, it went up 15%. Now, a lot more people stayed than switched, but the average here is 9%, which means your income has gone up a lot to cut into this difference. Still not all of it. It's still more expensive. But then there's other things too. Look, gas has gone up, food's gone up, services gone up. Yeah, we get it. It's costing you more today than it did a year ago. No question about it. And that's where the market is right now. People are saying, wait a second here. I'm making more money, but the cost for the new home, plus the higher rate, plus all these other expenses is kind of throwing my budget out of whack. And that's why right now you have borrowers hibernating a little bit. But as we go through 2023, a change will take place. You see, these people are going to get more income as they get their next year's increase. And we know that ADP says those that stayed on their job went up 7.3%. So let's even be more conservative. Let's say it's only 5%. By that time, you've wiped out all the difference. And then wait a second. What if we're right? What if mortgage rates drop in the first half of this year to 5%? Well, you can argue that it is much more affordable, even at 5% with the higher purchase price in 2023 to buy a home than it was in 2021. And we all know what happened in 2021. So when do you want to be taking advantage of this opportunity? After everybody sees it and after prices start going up, or today when you could actually get a discount? Our housing forecast is for lower inflation and recession-like slowdown. Incomes increasing to help affordability too. There's tight inventory still, and rents are still expensive. There's no picnic, and they're rising. So we see low single-digit appreciation for most of the U.S. with a pickup in activity. So there's good news ahead, folks. And you want to get that out there. So you want some media exposure. Now, I do the opening for a show called The American Dream TV, and that's broadcast nationally, my piece. But then it goes to all different markets in the year. And I'm bringing this up to you because I talk to all these people that are real estate agents, mortgage professionals, and sometimes they do it together, but they take their market if it's available. And then what they do is they are able to get on TV. And you could feature listings, you could talk about lifestyles, but right now's the time to get market share. And this can do it for you. So if your area is available, you could apply to them. Now, it's not free. Obviously, they charge you, but it's something you may want to do together. I've figured I'd point this out to you. If you'd like it, do the QR code. I have no vested interest in it. All I do want to do is share with you ideas that work, and these ideas are working. Team, this sets up for a perfect opportunity in housing right now. It's a perfect opportunity. A year ago, if you wanted to buy a home for $500,000, you had to give them $50,000 over asking price and maybe not even get a home inspection. But now it's normal negotiation. Even if it's just 2% less on $500,000, that'll save you $10,000, right? You can certainly do that today. And that's a huge difference. Now, let me explain to you why that's so important. Because that $10,000, it would be the wrong decision to take the reduction in purchase price. You heard me right. It would be the wrong decision to take the $10,000 in purchase price. And what you want to show is why you, as a real estate agent or mortgage professional, add so much more value, because you're going to take this and turn it into a lot more money. You see, don't take the $10,000 reduction in price. Take it as a seller contribution towards a 2-1 buy down. In today's market, on this loan amount, it would cost you about $9,000. So that leaves you an extra $1,000 towards closing costs that you could use. The seller doesn't care. They're going to give you a $10,000 concession. They don't care where it goes. Use it towards your closing costs. Now, if you do a 2-1 buy down, guess what that means? Today, you can have a rate of 4 1/4 for the first year. That saves you $500 a month. And then when rates come down over the next 6 months or year, you can refinance. and you take the unused portion of the buy down. There's extra money there. You take the unused portion of that because you're not keeping it for the full 2 years, and you use that to pay for your refinance. So hold on a second. You get the home of your dreams today. You get a great rate today. You get a discount today. And then next year, you refinance practically for free, if not for free, to the rate that you could keep, which is a great rate, and then watch the market go up as everybody then discovers the opportunity and you have more buyers than there is inventory and prices rise. Now, one other thing you could do is you could do what's called a permanent buy down. Let me use this money to bring the rate down. You could probably bring that rate down by using this money to around 5.25% right now. What's wrong with that rate? That's a great rate. You're going to save $250 a month. But here's the other great thing about it, folks. Here's what's happened to a lot of your buyers. You showed them homes for the past several months, and they've seen rates go up. Maybe when you first started shopping with them, rates were lower. And when they got qualified, they were qualified for a much more expensive home. And so their eyes saw and got used to that price range. But since rates have gone up, they've had to adjust their thinking and they don't qualify for as much. So now they aren't as enthusiastic because they've been spoiled. And now they're settling for homes that don't look as good. So they're not as motivated. Well, guess what? If you take that reduction in purchase price and buy the rate down, you can qualify them for more of a home. So they go right back to the homes that they wanted to buy, that they were dreaming of. And now you can get that for them. Use this creativity to win more transactions. Look, it's up to your intelligence. It's up to your creativity. You've got to be smarter than your competition right now. The days of like deals are flying at us all over have changed. Now we've got to go back to taking market share. And that means being better than your competition. This will help you be better. And by the way, you could prove to them, and your teammates, your mortgage teammate at Fairway can show you, and they'll prove it to them mathematically because they've got the tools to show them that the payment is never better with the price reduction. For the first 2.5 years, the 2-1 buy down payment will be cheaper. After that, the permanent buy down is cheaper forever. And what if you sold your home? Well, for the first 1.5 years, that 2-1 buy down is better only for the 6-month period between 1.5 years and 2, and only by a slight amount would taking the price reduction be in their best interest. 2 years or more, if they hold on to the home, that permanent buy down would be the best bet. Team, show this to your customer. Your Fairway teammate could do this for you. Now, people are going to say, well, what about renting? Should I rent? Wait for this thing to kind of, calm down. What if there's a crash? Show them that there's no crash and show them why renting is not a good option. Hey, look, if they were thinking about a $400,000 home with 10% down, that's a $360,000 mortgage. Now, I know rates are around 6 1/8 or 6 1/4, but let's just say, to be crazy here, it's 7%. And let's even be crazier. Say they're going to live there for 9 years and they're never going to refinance the 7% to a lower rate. So we're making it real ugly. And plus, let's put in the kitchen sink here. Let's talk about all the things that you got to do as a homeowner that are more expensive than renting. Well, your taxes can go up. Your property taxes can go up 2% a year. Your repair costs that you don't have as a renter, the cost to sell the home in the future. And based upon the appreciated value, well, historically, values are going about 4.75% a year. So that means over the next 9 years, that value is going to be even more, making the cost to sell it even greater. Now, what about if you were to rent? Well, let's just say on a $400,000 home, that would be about $3,300 a month. But let's say you get a deal on it. It's $3,000 a month and your rent goes up at 6% a year. Should I buy or should I rent? Well, if you buy the home, you're looking at $3,500 a month, but man, so much cheaper to rent, only $3,000 a month. It's a no-brainer, right? Should I rent? No. Because watch the purple line, watch the rent. By the 4th year, you're already more expensive renting than you were buying the home. You're already more expensive. And in fact, over the 9 years, it cost you $33,000 a month more, $33,000 in total more to rent, $33,000 savings to buy the home. But wait a minute, what about this $500 a month difference in the first year? Is it really $500 a month? No, it's not. Because part of that in your mortgage payment is principal and interest. The interest goes to the lender. You know where the principal goes? It's your money. The example I would always use with my customers, I would tell them, hey, if I took cash from my left pocket and I moved that cash into my right pocket, is it still my money? Yeah, of course, but it's in a different location. You see, when you're about to write the check to your lender with your mortgage payment, that principal portion of the payment is in your checking account. It's your money. When the lender takes that check and cashes it, that principal payment portion is now an equity in your home. It's still your money. It's just in a different location. And you need to point it out because it's $44,000 of principal. You see, you're not really saving $500 a month. The difference is just your own money that's going into a savings account for you right here. And when you combine these two, you benefit by $77,000 better by buying than renting. But wait a minute, what about appreciation on the home? Historically, it's been 4.75%. So can we calculate easily 4.75% on 400,000 and do that compounded over 9 years? It's not easy to do. It's very hard for our customers to do for themselves too. That's why we have to show them. You know, after all, Albert Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And man, it sure is, because look at the balance. It's $207,000 benefit to the buyer. It's life-changing. 9 years from now, that $400,000 home will be worth $607,000. And when you add it up with this, and then of course, figure in the cost to sell and the tax benefits, it's $250,000 better to buy this home than to rent it. And believe me, I included all the costs, the repair costs, the taxes going up. And I even said that that mortgage rate was way above market, 7%, when the real rates today are closer to 6 1/8. I said that they never refinanced off that 7% to bring it down. And it's still $250,000 better over the 9 years. Folks, this is the opportunity you've been waiting for. Now, listen, if you're going to be living in this home for 1 year and move, you should rent. But if you're going to be there 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 or longer, why would you not buy this home? Well, I'm not crazy about the rate. Well, are you crazy about $250,000? Throwing that away? There's no reason why you shouldn't do this. And what you need to do is show this to them. And you and your Fairway teammate need to do this together. In fact, why in the world would you not have this at every single open house? Why would you have this when you go to present a listing? The best realtors in the country right now are doing that. They're getting more listings because they're saying, this is how I'm going to market your home. This is what I'm going to put out on social media. Look at the benefits of buying your home. So if somebody's thinking about renting, I want to point them to buying your home. And not only that, even investors that want to come in. Look at the investment property analysis. Nobody has this, but your Fairway teammate does. A $500,000 purchase price, 25% down. Let's say the rate's 7% 1 point. They're going to own the home for 10 years and rent it out. We'll take in the cost to buy, the cost to sell, the repair costs, the property taxes going up, and then the appreciation. They rent the home out for $3,500 a month, which is cheap for a $500,000 home. The rent goes up every year, but then there's some vacancy factor that they factor in there. In the first year, they lose a little money, but by the 10th year, they're making a lot of money. In fact, take a look every year, and you could see you're making 54.5% cash on cash return. But the real money comes in appreciation and amortization. You see, you've got rental income after the vacancy, $530,000, appreciation, $350,000. That gives you revenues of $883,000. Then all your expenses, interest, property taxes, insurance, repairs, closing costs to buy and sell, $468,000. Gives you a profit of $415,000. Your investment of $125,000 means you've got a rate of return on your money over the 10 years of 332%. That's year on year average compounded return of 15.8%. Man, if you were a money manager at Fidelity and you got 15% a year, they put you in the Hall of Fame, folks. This is something that we need to be showing our clients, because this is how you build wealth. This is how you build net worth. Now, speaking of net worth, Kiplinger's put out a really interesting story, and they said net worth, which is all your assets minus all your liabilities, if you wanted to be in the top 1% in the United States in net worth, you know how much you needed in net worth? You need $10.8 million. It's a lot. How about to be in the top 2%? Pretty close. Top 2% is great. $2.5 million. How about the top 5%? Pretty exclusive club. You need $1 million in net worth. How about the top 10%? $800,000. And the top half, you need $500,000. That's really interesting stuff. But the most interesting thing I found in this story from Kiplinger was that on average, 2/3 of all net worth came from home equity. 2/3 of net worth. There's a reason why people say that you need real estate to create wealth. You're not going to get rich being a renter. And you're not going to get rich avoiding real estate either, regardless of the crap that the media says. We have to help our customers make wealth for themselves and see the opportunity that exists in real estate right now. And by the way, How about your own AVM? You know, your Fairway teammate could give you an appraisal on any property in seconds. You don't want to do this on Zillow, by the way, because then they'll go after their army of realtors and mortgage professionals. How about how many bedrooms, how many baths, how much the price of every home in the neighborhood, and an appraisal on the home? Wouldn't this be nice to bring to a listing and have, by the way, all the comps and their locations on a map done for you and all the trends in the marketplace? What a professional presentation. Why not have this at every open house? Why not show this to every prospective buyer? Here's the appraisal on the property. You're getting a great deal on it. Help you with that seller come down to earth on their listing value. And then, by the way, how about a real estate report card that your teammate from Fairway can give you? Here's one on a actual property that's being listed there for $570,000. How does it stack up? What's historical appreciation? What's appreciation look like over the next 5 years? 20% over the next 5 years. That means that this home is going to go up $110,000 over the next 5 years. What's the demographics and ages look like? What a young area. That means there's going to be a lot of demand. What do the rental situations look like? How many households are being formed? And what's the builder data? There's going to be a shortage here. How about affordability? How about unemployment, incomes, job creations, everything you want on one piece of paper? Why would you not have this at every open house, at every listing presentation, and on social media? In fact, how could you do business without that? And wouldn't your competition beat you if they did? Your Fairway teammate could do this for you in seconds on all of these things. Have them help you do that. Hey, remember we started with a story that was kind of scary from American Banker that said, is it time to quit the business? There's one thing I forgot to tell you about this article. It was written in 2014. You know, if you got scared then, like so many people did, if you got out of the business, you missed the 8 best years in the history of this industry. Right around the corner from us right now, while it does look a little bit scary sometimes, there's a lot of good things. Don't you dare get discouraged. Don't you dare quit. And don't you dare pull back. This is the time to do more, to lean in, get with your Fairway teammate, start doing some of these things that the best people in the country are doing to increase your business, and show your customer that now's the opportunity. Because as the greatest investor of all time, Sir John Templeton, said, the time of maximum pessimism, which you see now, is the best time to buy. You know, Warren Buffett said, be greedy when others are fearful. Now's the time to buy. Now's the time to not just buy as real estate, but now's the time for you to buy into you. Build your business now. Do things right now. Heck, I wrote a best-selling book, thanks to you guys for helping making it a bestseller, called Money in the Streets, about finding those opportunities, and they exist today. Now, if you want to stay in touch with me on Instagram, go to I am Barry Habib. I put a lot of videos out there that are a lot of these concepts. They're very, very short. You can use them. People love them. Use them. Put them on your own Instagram. And by the way, you got to get on social media if you're not. Okay. So, folks, thank you so much for your time today. I think we finished up pretty much exactly on time. But what I also am available for is if you have any questions that you'd like to put in the chat window, or if you'd like to just say them live and come on, we're happy to do that, Andy. If you'd like to, or Mark, just let me know. I see there's a couple of things in the chat window, which aren't yet questions, but I see there is from a local agent asking, how does the inflation we experienced relate to and was caused by COVID pandemic, workforce shutdowns, and supply chain issues? Well, COVID indirectly did it because we had all that stimulus, which caused inflation, as well as the Fed keeping rates low. How does the infusion of federal money into the U.S. economy? It's inflationary. Why is no one talking about COVID workforce shutdowns? Well, because the workforce has come back. How do we expect to understand it'll come out of it? Well, we kind of went over that during the presentation, how to come out of it. Thank you. Any other questions, team?
We're good in Tacoma. Thank you so much, Barry.
Mandy, thank you so much.
Yeah, so don't go away yet. Just 1 second. We just have a couple quick things for you and everyone in the room. Thank you so much, Barry, for your valuable insight and what's going on in our market. We all learned so much from you today. And we're excited just because the rates are coming back down eventually, right? Are you guys excited?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah. Also a special thank you to Fairway Mortgage for sponsoring and bringing Barry for all of us here today, and anyone online. It's pretty amazing. So Barry, we have something special for you. Everyone
For me?
Yes. Could you please get these up? Come on, everybody. You got it? Okay, here we go.
Can everyone see?
We're gonna try to do this the old fashioned way,
Can
Barry.
you see it?
Thank you. That is so darn cute. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys. God bless you guys. Really, I wish you guys nothing but health and success in the new year. Stay optimistic, team. Stay optimistic. There's good things ahead. Okay. There really is. And I can't wait to come see you guys in person out there. Bye, everyone.